I wasn't recording. That's unfortunate. Well, let's try that again. This video contains spoilers for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Before I get into the meat and potatoes of my rewrite, what I'm pitching, I want to say first and foremost, I am not claiming that this is in any way a better version than what we were presented in the cinemas this weekend. I mean, hats off to Ryan Coogler and the whole writing team. I truly cannot imagine what it would have been like to be in that writer's room. What they were able to put together and present to everybody in such a short amount of time is nothing short of amazing. The main reason I want to make this video is just because I like fun little writing challenges like this. I like to present challenges, alternate scenes to myself for some headcanon. This is just something I like to do, and I thought I would tape it and share it with all of you. So if you like my version, fantastic. If you like their version, also amazing. So what does my change really consist of? Well, the main thing I wanted to do is give Lupita Nyong'o more to do. Not to say she's wasted in these, but you could easily write her out if she wasn't a character that we expected to show up in the next movie. Her character didn't have a lot to do in this movie, her character of that being Nakia. So my main change would actually be, and I'll spoil it right up front, I would like to make Nakia the new Black Panther. So it'll also kind of change the main themes of the movie. Of course, the themes of loss, grief, revenge are going to be very strong themes still, but actually the main theme, kind of incidentally, is going to be one of isolation. And you'll kind of see that as I run through my changes. And then, of course, the last thing this will majorly change is Shuri's overall arc. Her character arc more or less stays the same. It ends in a very different place because, of course, rather than becoming the new Black Panther, she will simply remain the Queen of Wakanda, taking on that responsibility. With that, let's get into what I would pitch for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. The first major change is going to come when Queen Ramonda finds Nakia in Haiti. She would still go to her after her daughter had been captured and practically beg her to come back and help track her down. But in this version, Nakia would pretty firmly refuse this call to action. Ramonda, of course, her desperation could easily turn to frustration, going on about where were you when Thanos invaded our home? Where were you while my son laid sick and dying? Where were you when we buried the man that you once said you loved? Where have you been for the last 6 years? And I need you now. That's when a little boy of about 5 or 6 could kind of walk up, a little frightened of who he does not know to be his grandmother. And Nakia could look down at him and have a nice bit of a tender moment between the two of them, introduce them, and say, for the last 6 years, I have been raising your grandson. This is Toussaint. And then, of course, we'd get some exposition, I'm sure. She was, in my mind, she was probably on an outreach mission in Haiti, found out she was pregnant, and then before she could share the news with T'Challa, Thanos invaded. All that battle happened, and then, of course, he was snapped away. She didn't know if she would see him again. Of course, he does come back, and then she finds out he is sick, so it's still not quite the right time to spring this on him. She wants to tell him when he's better, but of course, unfortunately, within the story world, he would not recover and would never find out about his child. Ramonda, of course, does eventually convince Nakia to join the team, convincing her that she will protect this boy with her life if at all necessary. So things continue as originally presented. Nakia is able to find Shuri and Riri in Telocan. She will still kill. I still want her to kill some of the guards. Maybe not the younger one she probably would spare the child in this version, but definitely do some damage so that we still get the rest of the movie to play out as it originally did. They all then arrive back in Wakanda. Shuri is introduced to her nephew, Toussaint, and Shuri is furious at Nakia for doing this. Did she learn nothing from the example of Killmonger for keeping secrets as big as this one hidden from them? She is angry at her. She is confused, and she expels her from the palace at once. At that point, we could still have a nice heart-to-heart between Okoye and Nakia. They've both kind of now been ousted from the palace. They get a nice tender moment between the two of them to catch up a little bit. The attack then happens in a very similar way that it did in the original film. However, in this one, I'd like that theme of isolationism to come back in a little bit. Isolationism and just protecting your own in this case. Rather than have Nakia jump into action to save others, Okoye will leap into action to save others. Nakia only seeks to protect herself and her son, which she does successfully do. And then, of course, Queen Ramonda does still sacrifice her life to save Riri Williams. And this is where the theme of isolation would really set in. This is where it truly begins. Of course, plant seeds earlier. Shuri's always in her lab working. She doesn't really talk to anyone anymore. She's become a bit of a recluse. Well, now, having lost her mother, Shuri is completely distraught. She is looking to blame everyone, everything. She blames Riri for her mother's death. If she was stronger, if she wasn't in the way, her mother would still be alive. She pushes her out. Of course, she's already pushed Nakia out. She's pushed Okoye out. She's pushing everyone away. She locks herself in her lab and begins to work on the heart-shaped herb. The only thing she wants now is power for revenge. That is her goal, and she is the only one who can bring her to her goals in her mind. She's the only one she can now trust. She's the only one she has left in the world now that her mother has passed. Now, in my version, unlike the film, Shuri will have already been, promoted to the rank of queen. As soon as the Queen Ramonda is confirmed dead, Shuri now has that responsibility, and yet she is rejecting that new responsibility in favor of her own interests, in favor of what she wants to do, in favor of making the herb in her lab. So Nakia is, again, going to take a bit more of an active role in this version and usher everybody out of the city into the mountains for M'Baku to look after. Nakia will then enlist Riri. She knows she is the only one who can go toe-to-toe with Shuri on a mental level. She's the only one who can get past the impenetrable defenses of Shuri's lab. And so Nakia is actually the one kind of smuggling her materials to make the Ironheart suit that we saw in the film. Couple days have passed. We cut inside the lab. Shuri is ragged as she works tirelessly on the herb, looking after nothing else, just this being her entire focus, enveloped on gaining this power to seek revenge, seek her own interests. Suddenly, the alarms in her lab start going off. There is a penetration of the outer wall, the outer defenses, whatever it may be, pulls up a security monitor, and yes, it is Riri Williams in the Ironheart suit getting into the lab. Shuri asks her AI, what is the confidence level? The AI responds, 85%, my queen. That'll have to do. Nakia and Ironheart finally make it into the interior of the lab, and it looks like Shuri is dead on the table. They ask the AI what happened, and he responds it was cardiac arrest in response to ingesting the synthetic heart-shaped herb. Nakia immediately takes the beads and tries to resuscitate her, and this is what is going to spark that trip to the astral plane that we saw in the movie, that amazing scene with the return of Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger. I wouldn't dream of doing anything differently with that. That was fantastic. Shuri then, of course, comes to as the new Black Panther, seemingly. Uh, Nakia asks her, who did she see on the ancestral plane, as she did in the movie, and Shuri denies it. This anger, this newfound strength, this confidence she now has. She takes up the Black Panther suit, goes straight to M'Baku, and has a very similar scene where she instructs him that they are going to war. He is going to follow his queen and the Black Panther into war against Talokan. But M'Baku will still slip a message to Nakia and Riri Williams that this is happening, where it is happening, so they can kind of plan their own counter to it. The battle at sea will commence just like it did in the film, except Nakia and Ironheart will be back at the lab, kind of figuring out what their strategy is. How can they stop this war? How can they stop it from escalating? How can they stop Shuri from making this tremendous mistake that they know she is now capable of making? Of course, we're intercutting the scenes of the lab with the escalating tensions of the battle. The Wakandans are losing this fight at sea. They are not in their home territory, and they begin to lose. However, Shuri is able to capture Namor. But even still, she takes him and flies off in the other direction. She's not interested in saving her people at this time. She just wants her revenge. So she, as their queen, abandons them mid-fight. We'll do one of those just when all hope is lost kind of scenes. That's when Ironheart and Nakia can swoop in. Nakia now gets her Black Panther introduction. Of course, at the lab, she has taken the rest of the synthetic heart-shaped herb. She's had her own trip to the astral plane, which we will not see, but we will hear referenced, just because obviously she will see T'Challa, and we can't use any of those scenes. But there is no time to really dwell on that. She gets to save some people on the ship, but she wants to know where Shuri and Namor are. A soldier is able to point her in the right direction, and she is off either in one of those sub-jet ski things or a flying machine. It doesn't really matter as long as she can get from point A to point B. So this fight between Namor and Shuri, Black Panther, will proceed exactly as it did in the original film. I think the fight was brutal. In fact, Shuri can maybe be even more brutal in this fight. You're not really rooting for her. You don't want her to win this fight definitively. You want Namor to hold his own. But of course, she will win this fight. But before she is able to land that blow, we again are introduced to Nakia as our new true Black Panther. This will be a fight not between enemies, but between friends. This should be an emotional climax. We had our nice battle scene. We had a good fight between Namor and Shuri. This is more of a battle of will. This is more a battle of emotion. Nakia is trying to reach Shuri to let her know that she is not alone. She still has a family. She doesn't need to take it out on him. She still has a people to protect. Think about them. Thankfully, she is able to reach Shuri. They embrace, and an emotional moment. The two Black Panthers embrace, and she does spare Namor. And of course, we have the rest of the movie. At some point, I imagine Shuri will relinquish her Black Panther powers. Of course, she won't. It seems like she relinquished control of the country to M'Baku at the end of the original. I may have misread that, but it appears to me that she is just going to be Black Panther and not Queen of Wakanda. In this version, she would just be Queen of Wakanda. She would overcome her selfishness. She would overcome that feeling of wanting to isolate herself and instead surround herself with her people and be their queen, leading them into the future. As for Nakia, a very similar thing goes. She is also not going to isolate herself and look after just her and her son's interests. She's had so much taken from her, but she now sees she wants to set an example for Prince T'Challa, Toussaint, and be the hero, be the savior, the protector of Wakanda. And that's it. That's the rewrite I had in mind for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know how you would have done things, or if you thought the movie was perfect. It was very good. I definitely enjoyed it. I enjoyed writing this video. I am looking forward to seeing more of Letitia Wright's Black Panther in the future. I thought it was a very bold choice, very interesting choice, and I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what they do next. Until then, Wakanda Forever.